to the Traveling Designer Podcast. My name is Rick. Thanks for joining. I really appreciate it. I kind of feel like this is turning into the quarterly podcast, but I always say hopefully it's about quality, not quantity. So hopefully I can give you some quality today. But I come to you, I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona. Sun is going down. I'm actually just west of town in a free camp spot that I found on the app Camptendium. If you're looking for free spots or paid spots with good reviews and great ideas about camping, I definitely say check that out for sure. I've been up here for a couple of weeks and it's been great. So I want to dedicate this episode to a friend of mine, a friend who he left us way too soon. He wasn't a traveler, but he still always took the time to listen to all my episodes. I mean, I know not many people do, it's kind of new and such, but he always, like I said, took the time to listen, and he would always text or call me after he did and kind of give me his thoughts. So I always appreciated that. He will be missed more than I think I still realize. But I guess my only advice or thing I've been thinking about is make sure we live for today, because we're never guaranteed a tomorrow. So anyway, I always like to kind of say what I've been up to. But yeah, it's been a while since episodes. So basically, I'll kind of summarize it a little bit and tell a quick kind of story or anecdote. But I've been in Arizona for most of 2019, traveling all through. I started the year on the west side, and I moved my way to Mesa and Phoenix area. Now up here, I actually did a quick trip to Moab as well. So I was basically, all this time, this is like my last night in Flagstaff. I'm actually on my way to Colorado. So I'll be in New Mexico tomorrow and probably in Colorado in 2 days. So I'm super excited about that. But one thing I got to do, it was like 10 days ago, was visit the Grand Canyon. It was actually my first time ever there. I tell people I feel like the Grand Canyon has always kind of eluded me. I've made trips or planned for trips and I've been close, but I've never actually made it there before. So it was awesome to finally get to go and to see it. It is pretty amazing. It is the grandest of the canyons. It is gorgeous. I can't really do much with my dog, so I wasn't able to go down in and hike, which is disappointing. But we took the time to definitely find a good spot as the sun was going down, and it was awesome. It was so beautiful and such a calming and great experience. So if you haven't, I highly recommend it. But one of my favorite podcasts I've done since I've started doing these was one I did a year ago in California, and the subject matter was about artists in the national parks. So there was two things that I guess that came back that I noticed when I was in the Grand Canyon. One, I had a chance to go to see I don't know if I'm pronouncing their name right, the Cole brothers. They had a studio that they built, a photography studio that they built, and it ran from 1904 to 1976, and it was right on the very south rim of the Grand Canyon. So that was something that I learned when I was researching that podcast. So I got to go and see that, which was really cool. It's now a museum and a little bookstore and such, but it's right at the trailhead going down, and I thought that was cool. This something about all that history, which was pretty amazing. And then the other thing was that I mentioned in that podcast too was Thomas Moran, and I brought him up because of Yellowstone and the Tetons. Mount Moran is named after him, and he actually sold a painting to Congress that was of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone that he sold for $10,000, which was a huge amount at the time. But because of that following year, he was able to join an expedition with John Wesley Powell out of Salt Lake City, and he got to actually visit the Grand Canyon. And he was able, visit the Grand Canyon and did a bunch of paintings and such. And there's a place there called Moran Point, which I never knew. So I thought that was really interesting to to learn some of that kind of stuff, to learn some of that stuff. So it was a great trip. I actually then went to Lake Powell as well, and went to Horseshoe Bends. I was going to do Antelope Canyon, but I couldn't find a place that I was comfortable with to watch my dog, so I skipped that. Plus it was 96 degrees, so it was a little hot. So I spent a day in that area and had a great campsite at the beach at Lake Powell. But after that, I was like, I'm huffing it back up the mountain. It was way too hot. All right, so for this episode's topic, and it's one that might not take all that long, and it's not be relatable to everybody, but it's something that's new for me, and it's towing a vehicle. So obviously, if you have a trailer, this might not be something that you might get a lot of, might not be something that's going to interest you, obviously, but if you're someone who might be thinking about what to travel in or whatever, this might be there might be some useful information here, I mean, when you decide to be an RVer, one of the first things you do is like, all right, well, what do I want? What do I want to travel in? And then, the second question you should ask yourself from that is, and then how can you go out and see the things you want to see? So I think those are two really important questions. And so maybe I'll talk quickly about why I chose a C-Class camper and then why a vehicle was needed afterwards. But, it was the only kind of camper I guess I ever really thought about. I never really thought about towing anything. At the time I had a beat up Subaru, so I couldn't tow with that. I had a number of years where I really had kind of this romantic vision of buying a Toyota Dolphin and traveling in that for like a summer. And if you don't know what a Toyota Dolphin is, Google it. It's essentially it's a small C-Class. I could probably fit the entire C-Class, that Toyota Dolphin, inside of mine. They're about 20 feet long, and I mean, you can actually pull them into a regular parking spot, so anyway, I don't know, I've always wanted a C-Class. I always thought it was just easy. I only need one insurance. The setup is easy. You can't necessarily be stealthy with it, but you can still just park and sleep. I was driving through Colorado with a friend, like my first month of traveling, and we got lost and we couldn't find the people we were trying to meet, and we just pulled over in this little town and fell asleep. So you can do those kinds of things, and and it's safe. I mean, basically sometimes I have to level this thing off, but other than that, there's not much really else to do. There's a story going around, or a friend of mine, he's an escaper who had a little accident with his trailer, which, if I think about it, I'll post. There's a couple blog posts that I believe they did about it, and I'll try to do the link in the credits or whatever in the post. But yeah, I just always thought the C-Class camper was easy, and I just wanted something that my dog could roam around in when we were traveling around and was comfortable for her. So so that's just kind of what I went with, and I never thought about ever towing a car. It just never really entered my head. I was kind of in this mentality when I first started traveling of everything, of having things be simple. I was getting, I moved out of my apartment. I got rid of 90% of my things. I got rid of my car. I just wanted something. I just wanted simplicity. So I knew that there would be some compromise. There's compromise in anything you do, but I think I realized that there's going to be things that I couldn't do, and I was okay with that. I still remember being in Joshua Tree and wanting to see this section. I don't remember what it was, and there was just no place to park. There was no place to park a 27-foot camper, and this was even in December. So, and there's lots of roads I can't go down and things that I couldn't do. There's a waterfall where was that at? In Oregon that I couldn't do. It was like, I would have had to hike like 3 miles just to get to the trailhead. And I kind of decided not to. But anyway, like for the first couple of years, it all worked. Like I said, I think if you have the right mentality, it was fine. It was fine for me. But I have to admit, like, things probably changed about a year ago. I went to an escapers event in Oregon and met a bunch of cool people, and it was the first time I started meeting other travelers. And then a couple months later, I was going down the Oregon coast, and there was a few people who were doing kind of the same trek I was doing, and I kind of waited around. They caught up, and it was the first time I've actually, caravanned with other travelers and kind of, got to see how other people travel and such. And with that group, we had a woman who had a Sprinter van, and there was a couple who had a trailer and a truck, and then he actually had a motorcycle. So they had a lot of flexibility. And then another guy who had an older C-Class like myself, and he towed a Geo Tracker. So, I mean, it was interesting. I definitely started for the first time picking his brain about towing, and he kind of, encouraged me, and I guess kind of made it sound really easy, which, it's not as easy as I think I had it in my head at first, but it started planting the seed, and like I said, too, when I was with that group, we probably did a lot more boondocking than I was used to. I always tried to free camp whenever I could, but at the same time, and it all depends on where you're at, obviously, but but the one thing is I always kind of justified staying at, state parks or other things because for a few reasons, I got a place to park, and most of the time I wanted to have cell service so I could work. I wanted to be able to go hiking without having to move my vehicle or drive my whole house just to go to a trailhead. So there was, lots of justifications there. So when I started, boondocking more, and then caravanning with my friends, I had to rely on them to, take me places. Like if we all decided to go hiking or whatever, it usually required driving. So, that was the first time I said I had to rely on other people to kind of, take me to those places because that's just not the way I traveled myself. So I saw kind of a different side of things. So I got super excited. I was on my way back to Washington for Christmas, and I had another beat up Subaru that I bought when I was in Penn. I was like, I'm going to sell that. I'm going to get something, and then I'm going to go to Arizona with, get it all set up. That didn't happen. I got back to Washington, and first I got sick. I was on my back for 10 days, so pretty much the whole thing was scratched from the get-go, but I did start to be able to, do some research and, start to kind of put the pieces together of what I needed, like what kind of vehicle I wanted, what kind of vehicle could I tow, what kind of vehicle could I tow 4 down, 4 wheels down, and all the things that are involved, and I won't get into all of it, but you have to see what, find a vehicle in which, I wanted a vehicle which first I could have some fun with. I wanted to be able to tow it 4 down. I didn't really want it to have any restrictions, and there were some vehicles that had, restrictions of, they encourage you not to go over 55 miles per hour, or you had to do some work, unhook some things like the battery or is it the casing? I don't think that's the right term. But anyway, and obviously you had to think about weight, and then you had to think about what can your camper tow, and then finding something that is within that weight. So I started doing some research before the new year, and then kind of dropped it, and then went to Arizona. So I was on my way to Arizona for New Year's, in which then I went for New Year's and got to do some cool stuff, and then after we were in Lake Havasu, there was kind of like a caravan of us all going kind of south, boondocking again. So some of the same things kind of came up. We're boondocking, which is the great thing about Arizona is there's places to boondock everywhere, free camping, and it's amazing. But you're kind of out there in the middle of nowhere, so just to go to the store is packing up everything and driving to the store in my home, or hiking. One time we did take my e-bike out with Mazzy, my dog. It was like 4 or 5 miles, which isn't bad, but the road was just so bumpy, and my dog, she's getting old. She didn't care for it at all. So I don't know if she appreciated that. And then at one point we were down in this place called American Grill Mine, which is technically in California, but super close to Yuma. and I was there for 16 days, and I think I only left like 5 of those days, to do certain things. I took my camper out maybe twice into town to, take care of the water and the dumping and go to the grocery store and such. So, I mean, yeah, I always have this way of making do. Like, I'm usually pretty content regardless, but I think there's a whole world out there that there's out there to see. I mean, the whole reason you're out there, decided to go RVing, right, is to go explore and to see things and to experience the communities in different parts of the country. So I feel like at times I wasn't quite maybe fully doing that with the way I was traveling, especially now combining a couple of things together, traveling with other people and kind of not doing things totally my way. So after that experience, I went to Mesa to visit my family, and then I really started gearing it up. I was like, all right, I'm in this. Like, I really want to make this happen. So started to go back and try to figure out what kind of vehicle I wanted. So I wanted something that was 4x4 where I could play and take trips in. I didn't want something too big. I needed to keep it to under 5,000 pounds. I think that's where my comfort level was with what my camper could do. So I finally decided on a Jeep Liberty. So 4-wheel drive, compact. I could I could tow it 4 down, all to 4 tires down, no restrictions. So I didn't have to do anything to it. So easier said than done trying to find an older model Jeep Liberty. I didn't want to spend a bunch of money on anything, right away. But took a little while, but I actually found a Jeep Liberty. And at that time I was too thinking, starting to do research on everything else, the towing package and everything that's needed there. Which is a whole, a lot more research. There's basically 2 companies you can kind of go with. There's Roadmaster and there's Blue Ox. Both of them are good. I've kind of read that Roadmaster was better, and that's kind of what I decided on. So, and they're amazing. They're actually neighbors of my parents' business. We have an RV awning business in Vancouver, and they're also in Vancouver. So I contacted them, and they were great. They asked, what kind of vehicle I had, and they basically gave me everything I needed to know and gave me the different packages, and ended up choosing one. If people are interested in thinking about it, it's called the Falcon 2. So it's like the middle level towing package, but it comes with everything you need. It came with the base plate, all of the wiring, but the great thing about the Falcon 2 is the tow bar itself. It shifts back and forth a little bit, so when you're trying to line it up, me traveling alone, unless I can get my dog to help guide me in, you need to be able, I don't have to be perfect when it comes to getting it close, because the bar actually comes out and goes side to side. So it helps, it makes it so much easier to, you don't have to be perfectly lined up. So that was kind of the package I decided to go with. The one thing that, like I said, I kind of knew going in what I kind of needed. But the one thing that I think I failed, at least in my research and how much, in terms of money and everything, was the braking system. It was something that not many people brought to my attention early on, but it's definitely something you need. There's a lot of states that require you to have a braking system, and I definitely, I just want to be safe. I don't want to hurt myself or anyone else. So essentially a braking system is for the vehicle that, when you brake in your camper, it automatically then brakes your vehicle. So there's a couple different ones you can get. There's the kind that it's a little bit cheaper. Every time you're getting ready to set up and go, you set up the braking system as well, and it kind of goes at the foot of, the driver's side where the brakes are. You set it up and you go. And there's another one where it's a little more expensive and it takes a little more intensive labor to install it, but pretty much once that's installed, you plug it in the front when you're plugging in everything else, and you're ready to go. So that's the one I decided to go with. So for people out there who are looking to who have a C-Class or thinking about which way to go and thinking about price, I spent $2,400 on parts. So yeah, so not necessarily cheap. So then, you've got you got to get this stuff installed. So if there's people out there who know how to do it, I know a lot of my escaper friends and other travelers I know are a lot more savvy when it comes to that kind of stuff than me. I didn't really have the time as well. I was itching to get out of Arizona. I actually had another thing that came up that I'll talk about here in a second. So I decided it'd be best, all things considered, just to pay someone to do it. So I had my vehicle, parts were there. I, at this point, was calling around to a couple of places. I took it into a place to have them look at it, and they took a look and they said, "Do you know there's frame damage to your vehicle?" And I was like, "No, I don't. I didn't. It wasn't in the Carfax reports or anything of that nature." And then I bought it from a place that essentially they're buying cars from an auction and they're reselling them. So they probably knew what happened, but I don't know. They definitely didn't tell me. So I was super freaked out because I just thought I bought a vehicle that I can't even use. So took it around, finally found a place who looked at it and said, "Hey, we think we can fix the frame and put all the towing stuff in." And so that's why I went to Moab and ended up coming back while they were working on it. So if anyone's in the Mesa area or in Arizona, I highly recommend using Cliff's Welding. They are awesome. They know what they're doing, and actually, like, once they get in there, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, or they thought it was going to be. Basically, I thought I was going to spend $1,000 just to fix the frame, but essentially they got it fixed with like an hour's worth of labor. So that was great. It was a pleasant surprise. They got everything set up, and it was for people who are keeping track, that was $2,200. So usually, yeah, if someone that's about average, like about $2,000. But if you're gonna, if you end up doing the different, the different braking system, you might be able to do it yourself, or it might not definitely cost that much, because they definitely said it takes them a full day to install that. So for people who are trying to keep track of that, that's some useful information there. So, so I came back from Moab after being there for a couple weeks and learned how to set it all up and everything, and I was set to go. I was super excited, a little nervous too. It's different, to have this thing, pulling something behind you. My camper drives a little different, feels a little different, but super excited. And I kind of felt like the RVing gods just threw me in the mix, like, right away, because as I'm on my way towards Sedona, I break down twice. It was completely non-related to the towing. It overheated. I had some work done when I was in Mesa. I had to get a new radiator and stuff, so I won't talk too much about that. It's a little fresh for me. I'm still a little frustrated. So anyway, I got pulled over and taken it. I ended up getting it into a place in Cottonwood, Arizona, just south of Sedona, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's leaking antifreeze. It'll take a couple of hours." They had it for 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks. So but I had a vehicle. I was able to leave and and to do all kinds of things, and I could not imagine being there for 2 weeks and not having a way to get around. I don't know if I've ever told this story before on a podcast, but my first day of traveling was June 1st, 2016, and I left Boulder, Colorado. I didn't even get to Colorado Springs, and I broke down. And I broke down once, and I thought I got it fixed, and actually I didn't. I broke down again the next day, and I had to be pulled and dragged to a little town where I was there for 4 days while they were putting in a fuel pump. And yeah, so it was a little town, but yeah, 4 days. I mean, obviously I had no other car, so I had no way of getting around to do anything, and it actually worked out well. Like 2 nights I slept in the camper at the shop. I think at one point it was even at like a 40-degree angle, and I slept in it anyway. A couple of nights I actually slept in an RV park in my tent. I told the owner of my story, and they were the nicest people ever, and they let me stay there for free. But I kind of just had my routine. I woke up and there's a coffee shop I walked to, and then I went to the park, and I had a pavilion so I could work, and I had electricity, and I would go across the street to the farm to table place for lunch, and so it all worked. And there was places I could walk my dog, so it all worked out. Cottonwood, I was kind of thinking about it. I would have had to walk like 2 miles just to get to the grocery store, but I had my liberty, so I took full advantage. Like all of a sudden I could do all this stuff. I was frustrated at the fact that I had it for 2 weeks, but I visited like 2 national monuments. We found little watering holes and hikes, and we went to this little small towns like Jerome, which was pretty cool, and went to Flagstaff and went to breweries and stayed up in Flagstaff for a few days, and went to Sedona and did the drive up to Sedona. So I took full effect, full advantage of having a car and being in a place. I feel like I said, I was just kind of thrown into it of being able to have a vehicle and having to. That's the only way I could get around while my camper was getting fixed. And it was kind of the first time where I thought like maybe not having something, didn't make my life simpler. Like actually having something like a vehicle made my life better and simpler. And it was amazing just how much just being in Flagstaff I've done. I feel like I've been up here for a while now, and I've taken full advantage. And it's like I said before, the reason you travel is so you can do things and experience things and such. And it's been great having a car from here and where I'm at. And I'm about 5 miles from town, and I feel like I know Flagstaff really well. And I've like when I went to the Grand Canyon, basically went there for 4 days, and also to Lake Powell, and I tent camped in the Jeep. So it's been amazing. It's been a complete 180 in terms of what I can do. And I kind of always joke to myself that I'm an official RVer now. I've put my big boy pants on, and it's like seeing a whole new world. So it's it's been great. So if you're thinking about if you have a C-Class and you're thinking about towing, I do recommend it. There's some complexities to it, and I feel like I'm going to have to become a better planner for some things. And I'm a little concerned about how the wear and tear on my vehicle, on the camper, dragging it around and everything. But those are things I think will get easier over time, and I'll get used to. And my gas mileage, I was around 8.5 miles to the gallon before, which was pretty awful. And now I'm probably down to like 7. So there is that too. But you kind of look at the give and take as I'm definitely going to be able to boondock more, and from there be able to go explore. So it's spend some extra money here, you save some here, but it should be all about the experience. And I feel the experience is going to be so much more enriching than it was before, even though up the first 2 years was great too. So like I say, I definitely highly recommend it. But definitely do your homework. Make sure you get a vehicle that is compatible to your rig, and that your rig can handle it. It's a little scary going up hills. It's slow going for sure. So there's some extra planning involved in doing it, but I definitely think it's worthwhile. So that's it. That's what I got. If people have questions, I think there's probably people who can answer them better, but I'll definitely do my best if anyone has any questions. So I've been thinking about future episodes, and I think I've got a couple others, so hopefully it won't be like another quarter before I do another one. I was thinking about doing one on solo traveling, and maybe one on boondocking. If anyone has any thoughts or questions or anything they want me to talk about, let me know. Message me in some way. And definitely look at that. That'd be great. And so I always like to do a quote at the end. So I'm going to kind of come full circle. And this is a quote that Thomas Moran, when he wrote a letter to his wife after seeing the Grand Canyon. and it says, the whole gorge for miles lays beneath us, and it was by far the most awfully grand and impressive scene that I have ever yet seen. So I think it's a pretty bold statement for someone who spent so much time painting the Tetons in Yellowstone to say something like that. So, yeah, if you have a chance to see the Grand Canyon again, I highly recommend it. So anyway, that's it. This guy, because it was pretty quick. I thank everyone for listening, and until next time, safe travels and enjoy your summer. All right, bye-bye. To listen to all the episodes and to read my blog, go to www.travelingdesigner.co.